sitting at the dinner table, but we're actually not. We're physically there, but mentally and emotionally, we're like at work, and we aren't actually present there in the moments with our family.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of 5, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. from Dad Central. And I every time I'm wondering, sometimes I see facial hair, sometimes I don't see facial hair. So this is the thing we always got to wonder, when is Drew going to have facial hair and when is he not? Hello, Drew Solon.
Hi, Ed. Yeah, Drew Solon from Dad Central. I wish there was a rhyme or reason, but there isn't. It's usually just laziness.
Hey, that's honest. Hey, what's on that cup? Funny, patient, strong, hero, leader, friend. All right. We need
a acrostic, father.
Yeah, father. We need to do a T-shirt for that, but that's a whole other conversation. You know?
You got it.
All right. You are watching and listening to Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And we are sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believe that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. We have another great conversation topic today that I know Drew's going to love chatting about. And it's how to reduce stress and build real connection with your kids as a dad. Drew, opening thoughts.
Well, connection has been a default of mine for a long time. I founded Connected Dads years ago because I truly believe the power of connection is just so important. And so stress gets in the way of connection. So I think it's really relevant.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. In this episode, we're going to talk about or chat about 3 main points: the provider trap, 2, regulating yourself before you reconnect, and then finally, connection is built in the boring. So, Drew, let's talk about the provider trap. You've never experienced that, have you?
I'm not sure what dad hasn't.
The
reality is that for some reason, we almost have this like innate biological thing that we've got to provide. Now, the question is it actually biological or is it more cultured or socialized? Is it just kind of because we've learned it from that's what our fathers did or the father figures that we had in our life did? I don't know what the answer is, but I think most dads experience that. Now, the challenge is in some dads who maybe they don't experience that. And they're like stay-at-home dads, and they're actually really comfortable, and what they're providing is different. But we would need more stay-at-home dads to talk about that.
100%. I just want to add that many dads, fathers, male caregivers, we prioritize productivity over presence. And it's something we have to sort of loosen up because, and I'm sure many of us were raised productivity, provide, but also there's more areas of providing other than just financial. Presence is really important, and I want to suggest a mind shift set for everyone here. Your presence is provision too. Drew, anything you want to add on to what I've shared there?
Yeah, I just think of that. I think it was the Sidewalk Prophets. That's a music group. They had this song called Lead Me. And it was essentially the voice of a wife and a child left behind by a father who's focused on essentially provision. And, this idea that, there's a big toll both on, I think, men and fathers, as well as the family members that are left behind when dads only focus on this financial provision. And so that's just kind of what stands out. And so, many men find themselves feeling empty, disillusioned, discouraged, or frustrated when they've been working their butts off to try and provide, but then there's a big gap in their actual relationship with their wife, with their children, and they feel that huge disconnect. And so I think that's the real danger, right? When you focus on productivity and financial provision only at the expense of the real thing that matters, which is the relationship. And so we're not saying productivity is bad, or financial provision is bad. I mean, that's responsible. And so but what we're wanting to say is that if you prioritize financial provision only over the real relationship, there's a big gap, and eventually that gap's going to widen, and that's where you see families break down. That's where you see unfortunate things happen to both men and people who are left behind as a result.
Yeah, that's so good, and I can relate myself, when I was younger. I still feel I'm young, but that's a whole other conversation, that I was so driven about defining myself by the work I do, the 9 to 5 or whatever, and that flipped for me when my dad had suffered a heart attack and a quadruple bypass, and that flipped my scripts saying how important family is. 'Cause the age-old adage saying, "When on your deathbed, are you gonna ask for more money or more time?" Right? And it's just it really hit me then, and I really try to instill in dads, fathers, male caregivers, the time piece, spending the time, whatever your situation is. Yes, you've got to provide for your family, 100%. But those quality times you spend with your children, can't put a price on that. And they don't have to be money involved either. Troy, sounds like you're gonna add something there.
I just agree. I think that's absolutely right, and I think most of the people who are probably listening would agree and resonate. I don't know that many of our audience are maybe on side with this point. It might be the question of, well, how do you do that when you feel stress, and when you feel pressure and you feel like you have to provide? And I'll be honest, there's elements of that for me where I experience that. It's like, man, we've got 5 children now, and they're growing and they're older. That costs money. Economically, there's a lot of uncertainty and challenge, and we've just gone through this. So there's legitimately, I want to acknowledge, it's hard to manage your own stress in the midst of what's going on externally and around us. But the ability and importance of it is where I think Ed and I are coming in, that you need to find ways to do it. And that's what we're hoping that we'll give you as we go to our second and our third points.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's go to our second point, regulating yourself before you reconnect, doing that transition window. And I know, again, a lot of people listening to this can relate. How do you, or do you turn off the work mode to the dad mode? Truth, for those who are watching, they see it, but you heard, if you were listening, you just heard Drew sort of breathe there. So whenever he does like that and he gives me a smile, I says, I got to hear what's going on in that mind. So transition from the work mode to the dad mode.
Well, and I talk about this idea of work life integration as opposed to work life balance. And so it's kind of similar here, because what that was for me was, okay, yes, a transition window is important, and being able to, you know, the word you might say is compartmentalize, but you also have to find ways to integrate. And this is part of my challenge now, is that how do I, have work essentially at home, which is some of what I'm doing, and then make a transition being at home to then my children being home. Boundaries is really important. Taking care of myself, finding time and space. So there's a lot of challenges there. And so what's my practical strategy? When the weather's better, which is hopefully it's going to get here.
Are we going to get any spring? Are we going to get spring weather?
Let's not digress. Even when the weather's not good, there's no excuse for this. Taking a 5-10 minute walk, just getting outside of the house, getting some fresh air, putting in 5 minutes or 10 minutes of like a song or two that really helped me. It doesn't take much to create a transition window, whether it's actually, in the driveway after driving home from work, or whether it's in the 5 or 10 minutes before I step out of my office through the threshold into the rest of the house where the rest of the family is. And so I think it's really important. A couple of things. Anyways, I'll leave the rest for you.
Yeah, good stuff. I'll just add on to that, like taking a 5-minute walk, especially if you're working from home. Take that walk, whether it's morning, uh, in the middle of the day, take that walk. If you're at the workplace, don't be glued to your chair for hours upon hours. Get up, stretch, take a walk, just get it out of your head. Having a breathing routine in the car. You know, I share this story, I've shared it in the past, I'll share it again. I was having the opportunity to assist this gentleman who was in San Francisco, ran a mortgage broker company, high intense. And like he'd finish work, then come home. There's three kids and his partner there, and it's just mayhem, absolute mayhem. And I made the suggestion to him, you know what? First of all, see if you can leave work on time. Put that boundary of leaving work on time. And then one of two things. Do you have a decompression playlist that you can put on in the car? Don't put on the news, especially these days, but you have some songs you can listen to just ease you into the next part of your day with your family. And I also suggested that when he stops in the driveway, take about 5 minutes, relax, do some breathing, some deep breathing, so you can just get rid of everything else mentally that you've had during your day, and you can come in whole and present to your family, because you never know what's going to happen when you open up that door.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen, but I think you can always plan for and regulate yourself to be able to respond instead of react. And I think that's where we're coming from is in order to do that, you have to create the space. You have to put margin in your calendar. You have to put self-care in your calendar. You have to, make the time and then be intentional in doing it. And so I think years ago, we had Adam Hart on, and he had like a simple 33-second breathing routine. And, we often, especially in our stressed lives, forget to simply breathe, right? And so in that 5 minutes, just sitting in your car, just taking some intentional deep breaths, doing box breathing. We've talked about that, where it's breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, etc. So simple things like this actually do make a huge difference, because the physiology, is really positively impacted when you're able to take those breaths in. And as we get stressed, our breaths get shallower and shallower, and we're not bringing enough oxygen in. So breathing, as simple and kind of rudimentary as it sounds, is actually one of the most fundamental things we can do to regulate ourselves before we then re-enter to attempt to begin reconnecting. I'm going to add one more thing here. I think the importance of understanding our emotional state, which is a whole separate, and we just did Stuart Shanker talking about stress in the previous episode, or a few weeks ago, I guess, once this will go live. And I can't underscore how important it is to get a handle on our true emotions and to be able to process those emotions in healthy ways. That's one of the greatest areas, I believe, of growth that most men and fathers could really invest in, that would make a significant change in their ability to regulate themselves and then be able to do what we're going to talk about next, which is actually truly connect.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add in one little thing, quick. Remember, dads, you can't pour into your kids from an empty tank. I'll leave that there. Number 3, we've got connection is built in the boring. Interesting. Ordinary moments can be those most special moments for dads and fathers and their kids. And it doesn't have to be big. Drew, what do you want to chat on there?
I'm continually amazed when my kids share memories that they've had from years ago. It's like, wow, they remember that. Well, that's what stood out to them. It's not because some of the moments weren't fun or exciting, but it's the little details that I didn't even know that they were aware of that really, I think, catch me by surprise. We just came back from a Florida trip, and I think about the moments that stood out to me were sitting around the dinner table, or sitting on the sort of lounging chairs after a day of kind of having fun, driving in the car, singing and making jokes and having just good time. Like, those moments could have happened here, but we just happened to be away together, and we did some big things. We did some exciting things, and yes, there are some good moments there too, but really stood out is those normal everyday moments. And so there are many dads who could probably say, we're sitting at the dinner table, but we're actually not sitting at the dinner table. we're physically there, but mentally and emotionally, we're like at work or we're with, some other thing that's got our attention, and we aren't actually present there in the moments with our family, able to hear and listen and make eye contact at our children or smile at them or to ask them a follow-up question when they talk about, that thing that happened at school that they're really wanting you to ask about. But if you're not present, you can't actually realize, oh, wow, this is a big deal for them. And it's not just, and I should actually take some time to focus on them. So, these daily, minute by minute, moment by moment interactions are actually the ones, when you add them up over years and years and years, make the biggest difference and allow us to engage or improve our connection. And so I think big gestures are wonderful. Big trips like we just went on are wonderful and they're exciting and they create great memories. But, day to day, you have the ability to make a huge difference by just being fully present and build that connection.
100%. Just going to add on to that. Quality time doesn't have to be big or Instagram worthy. No, the small things like Drew has mentioned, also things like bedtime talks, dishwashing chats, Saturday morning pancakes, they create long-term emotional safety and trust. So I want to challenge our listeners out there, choose one boring task that they can turn to bonding time.
I like bedtime. I also like morning routine.
Yeah, I know you're a morning guy just like me. I love the morning stuff. It's so good, so good. Well, we're about ready to wrap it up. We covered 3 things today: the provider trap, regulating yourself before you reconnect, and connection is built in the boring. Any last comments you want to make today, Drew?
I think the only comment I'll make is that, there's something about your example of, and correct me if I don't say this correct, but when you are looking back, let's say nearing the end of your life, you're not going to be wanting more money. You're going to be wanting more time or more moments with the people who matter the most. And that's truly what matters. And that's what your children are really loving as well. They're loving time with you, Dad. So be present, take the most of those moments and really engage.
100%. All right. We recommend getting the 7-step guide to stop yelling. There is the link there on the screen. And just to do a recap, you are watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. Our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. We'd love to hear from you. Email address, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Podcast website, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And finally, we have piles of free resources. So check us out at dadcentral.ca. As always, I want to say thank you so much for giving the most important thing of yourself, your time, to check us out on Dad Central. Always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace and make it better. Thanks again. Take care.